All right, so in this video today, we're going to talk about some best practices for variable usage and mapping within an SRD. So there can be performance issues that arise when there are many records in the SRM variable form, millions, and that can easily happen depending on the complexity of an SRD and PDT flow and the amount of items that are being mapped to it. So here are a couple things that can be done to help reduce the amount of variables that are stored within a runtime process flow. Okay, so within the PDT, if you're not using variables between objects in a PDT, so especially if you've got a single item in your flow, output variables should not be defined because that's essentially going to double the amount of records stored in the SRM variable form, and we're going to take a look at that here in a minute. And then also, where possible, and this especially applies to some of the work order type fields, make use of the default service request to fulfillment application target data mappings. And we'll take a look at those as well because that can help reduce the amount of variables that you've got in the form. So let's take a look at both those items in real time. Okay, so here is right now in the variable form, if we look, I've got 24 records in there. So if I submit this SRD, got a few questions here. Going to answer a few questions. Okay, so now if I submit this, let's go now look at our variable form and what we've got in there. We've now got 36 variables. That submission resulted in 12 variables. So let's take a look at our PDT. So in our PDT, we've got output variables defined for these items. So right off the bat, those should be removed because I've only got one item in the flow. So if you just come in here, you should be able to just do this on the fly. It's not going to affect anything in your SRD at this point. And those are done. You can just save that. And then let's go back and submit this request again. And if we submit it again, we had 36 records in here. Now let's see how many we've got. Now that reduced the count by 4. So now we're down to 44 records. So that took 4 records off the submission. We went down from 8 to 12. So let's look at this a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at our SRD. We see here, actually, I probably should have had the AOT open. So let's look at the AOT real quick. Okay, so if we look at our AOT, we've defined 2 fields in the AOT that have a default mapping in the application target data. Meaning, here they are right here, type field 1 and type field 2. We can see these in our AOT, type field 1, type field 2. By default, if you pass any value to SR type field 1, it automatically is going to get copied to work order type field 1, and the same thing for type field 2 as well. So that being said, we don't even need to have these variables defined here. These are not even needed at this point in time. So what we can do at this point is we're going to have to take the SRD offline. Now this could result in a little bit of because we're going to have to reassociate the PDT with the SRD, which means clear this out, which means some mappings are going to be lost. So take these considerations into mind when you're designing and creating it, because it can be a little bit of a pain afterwards if you have to clear the data out. So what we're going to go ahead and do is this. We've taken it offline. So let's go into the PDT. We don't need these we just don't need these variables because we're going to do an SR field mapping. So those aren't needed. And so let's see. We can clear these. And so those are gone there. I don't think they're going to be used at all. let's see, they're gone there. They've been removed there. Let's just save this. And then let's go back and look at this again. Let's just see what our, yeah, those, I don't see a method to remove those there. I don't think they're going to be playing a role in that though. Okay, so we'll then need to come in here and clear this out and then select it again. Then we can go in and do our questions and mappings again real quick. So we only have the two variables here, and so additional details there, and what is your issue there? Now what we're going to do on this other one is for the work order type fields we wanted populated, we are going to take the questions that we were using and we're going to pass those to these SR type fields. Okay, so now we're going to turn this SRD back online, and then let's go in here and select it again. And what we'll do is we'll do a couple of checks here after we submit this. Okay, so that's been submitted. So let's just go see how many variables we ended up with after that. We're down to 48, so we only had 4 variables that were created there in that latest run. Only had 4. So we went from an initial count of 12 down to 4. So let's go check the resulting work order so we can see if all of our items did get passed as expected. Okay, so here's the work order. There's our summary that we passed. There's the notes. And if we go here, here's our work order type field 1 and type field 2 data. So they got passed because of this application target data mapping value. So basically, the changes that we did, getting rid of the output variables and not using variables to pass data to fields that are already covered by application target data mappings, that took our variable count from 12 down to 4. So just, if you map that out over many SRDs and many users, that's going to help reduce the amount of records stored in the SRM variable form. So keep that in mind when you're creating SRDs, and if you've got some big ones that are doing it, creating many records in variable, while it may be a little bit painful to do, I'd recommend considering these options for ones on the fly, even if some remapping of variables needs to be done within the PDT. Thank you.